After getting the mag drive done yesterday, I'm going to go ahead and get this set and timed properly. And I don't really know anything about these mags, so I'm following the instructions. And it says to temporarily put the back plate on. It's on there. And then it says to remove the mag back cover, which I'm assuming is this here. Remove the mag back cover, the screw, and the 3 wires that go to the points. So I'm going to take this cover off and see what we got under there. Okay, taking that cover off just gets you to the contacts where your plug wire is hooked on. As you can see, these were set up to be either 4 or 2 cylinders, because it's got the other contacts inside and the spots there. Oh, and I'd already taken the plug wires off. That just unscrews off, and there's those springs and everything that hold that together. So we'll set that aside. That exposes 3 more screws, so we'll take those out. Okay, the 3 screws are the same length. These top 2 had a silicone capping them off. This bottom one did not have the silicone, but it has got a little rubber ring on it. So keep track of that when it goes back together. There's another screw down in there. Good thing I didn't get violent with it. Okay, once I separated this, there's your condenser in there, which I understand those probably need to be changed, being as how old they are. 12/7 of 88. The condenser wire right here goes to your points. That was the only thing I had to disconnect to separate the case. Your coil here connects with this contactor there, and then this wheel apparently acts as a distributor, firing each of the holes. Now, got a tooth mark there. You've got 2 teeth left and right, and you've also got a right there and a left. So when we put it back together, we'll need to make sure to get that lined up with that tooth. Okay, let's refer back to the instructions and see what I need to do now. Okay, I went and did a little more research on the internet as far as the Volkswagen timing and reading the instructions here. Basically, you're wanting this thing to fire at 26 degrees before top dead center. And we'll set the engine at top dead center. We'll back it up 26 degrees. And we'll mount this on the back, rotate it around, figure out where the points open and close. That way we'll know that it's firing in the right spot. We can mark it to where we can put that back on the case, and then we can drill and tap the hold down spots. Yeah, I used a wrench on the crank bolt, rolled it around. Looking at the prop hub, clockwise is the way the engine normally turns. Okay, you watch your valve train, your exhaust will open, your intake will open, and then the next stroke will be your compression. I used a pick, put down in there, gently touch the top of the piston. You could feel it moving out. When it stops, you can back it back and forth a couple times and find the sweet spot there where it starts changing direction, and that's your top dead center. So now, I need to find a degree wheel, which I've got one for the Sea-Doo somewhere, because we need to move it back. Would be counterclockwise 26 degrees. Yeah, I took the degree wheel, put it on the back here. Made a line across the hub there at 0 degrees. Then mark the case on both sides at 26. So now I just need to rotate the engine to where this line lines up with these. And that should be 26 degrees before top dead center. These little wheels for setting, you can get these at speed shops for setting cams and stuff, but this little one was for setting the rotary valve timing on Rotax engines. And I honestly think I've used it more on other stuff than I have actually setting rotary valves. So we'll go counterclockwise. and line that up. That's nice. Yeah, Scott had me set up and I didn't realize it. The mark on your right that's right above that bolt hole is top dead center. This mark here is 26 degrees, and what you do is sight down the line in the case. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but if you follow the parting line of the case, line that up, so that's 26 degrees. So that must have been something he's added and didn't get put in the plans. But that's good. I did it this way and then happened to look up there and everything lined up just perfect. So either way you do it, 26 degrees for top dead center. All right, we got this set up. This black thing is your breaker points. There are little bumps on that shaft that open the points. Now the way the points work is when the points are closed, you're charging the coil. Okay, when the points open, you quit charging the coil and the secondary field collapses, which fires the plugs. So the plugs fire when the points open, not when they close. Something a lot of people don't understand. They think everything fires when the points close, but no, they fire when they open. So right now I've got this set up. I've got the coil wire off, so we're not having any current flowing through the coil. So it's just the breaker points. Grounded on one side, hooked to that. The ohm meter is set to sound off when it makes continuity. So if we turn this back that way, that means the points are closed. And we bring it this way. Right there is where the points open, and that should fire the spark plug. And that has the coil in a vertical position, or has the magneto in a vertical position, right where it should be. So, charging, boom, they'll fire. So basically straight up and down. Basically that casting line there, marked with the casting line in the case. I'll mark it a little closer. So if I have to pull the magneto off, I can get it back in the same spot. You also want the magneto, see how it's offset from the center hole? This part here is longer. You want that facing up. And I wasn't sure how that went. I had to look, Dennis Brooks, I looked at one of his engine videos, saw that that was positioned that way. So thank you, Dennis. Looks like it would have trouble your intake pipes that go down below if you had it flipped around the other direction. So that's how it's positioned. That is timed at 26 degrees before top dead center where it should fire. So I'm going to mark that right quick. Then we should be able to put the magneto back together. And then we can mark where we want the holes to go for the hole down and get that done. One more thing on this magneto before I put it back together. Well, two more things. The little foam gasket that was on there was all ripped up. I'm going to try to put it together without a gasket. I don't think it will have any. It was a really thin gasket, so I don't think it'll have any interference problems. And then when I'm done, got everything set how I want it, I'll probably put a little anaerobic sealer to hold it together. But the main thing was the condenser. I mentioned earlier that they usually replace those condensers, and I've seen, I think it was on Dennis Brooks's engine, that Scott Kassler had mounted a condenser external because these factory slick magneto condensers are really expensive. And I was wondering why, and I think I figured out what the deal is. It looks just like a regular condenser right there, but I was assuming that these wires here, these connections, were what grounded the system out to kill fire so you could shut the engine off. Well, it appears that the one on the left, it just goes right into the case. The one on the right looks like it mounts into the condenser. So that's probably why the condenser is more expensive. Instead of just being a condenser, it's also got an extra lug on it to ground out the points to keep them from firing. So I don't see why you couldn't put a standard condenser inside right where it's at and then run a secondary wire to the points, you know, like most things do, to act as your kill wire. So that's probably what I'll end up doing, because I would rather keep the points, or I'd rather keep the condenser inside the unit if possible. But I think that's how it's set up. That looks like it. Unless I can find some other kind of condenser that has a second lug. Right now I'm going to bolt her together. Oh, and I made a punch mark on the case and a punch mark on the top there so we can put that back together in time anytime we had to have the mag off. Believe it or not, I was digging through the box that my mag came in to find the hold down brackets, and it has instructions. They were down in the packing. I never even noticed they were in there. But has a couple of interesting things. There's an alternate method of timing the magneto by going through the lead here with a test light or a timing light and then rotating it to where the light goes out. Now I tried that with the ohm meter, and the problem is right when I got to the right spot for the 26 degrees, the ohm meter would just, the beep would just cut out for just a second, which I assume that was where the points were opening, but it was also reading current because it was charging the condenser. So it's not an optimum way of doing it with the ohm meter, but it did work. It did line up right as long as you listen for that little hesitation in the beep. Or if you've got a timing light, you can set it up that way through the P lead without having to take everything apart. But since you're probably going to want to change the condenser anyway, you might as well just take it apart and set it how I did it. Because once you've got it set one time, it should be right. So now this is another reason I think that the original plans were set up for a different mag, because it shows the mounting deals top and bottom, and it showed a slot cut out in the mag so you could rotate it. Now this style just has the hold downs, and instead of top and bottom, I'm going to put those on the sides. I went back and looked at Dennis's video again, and that's where his were mounted. I didn't see any reason to mount it up top. Well, you couldn't mount it up top because you don't have enough room to get the nut in there. So they got to go on the sides. So we'll get that marked, get that drilled. I think I will put some studs in it, threaded through the case with a safety nut on the inside, red Loctite it on, and then we can just put a nut on the outside to hold it in place. Okay, pulled the back cover off, wanted to make sure there was nothing. I didn't think there was anything on either side that would interfere with putting a bolt in there. So we'll get the magneto on, figure out exactly where we want that. Instead of using a stud, I'm just going to run a 5/16 24-inch bolt from the inside out and thread this, Loctite it in place, have the bolt head on the inside, and it'll act like a stud on the outside with a nut there. That way I can loosen it up, move the mag if I need to. While we've got this off, I also have picked up a oil temperature gauge, and it needs a quarter inch pipe fitting to hook it up. So we'll go ahead and drill this out and tap it to 1/4 inch pipe. And that should be it as far as we should be able to bolt the backing plate on and seal it up on the engine. I got the ears positioned where I want them. Use a transfer punch. Now we'll go drill and tap those two. Okay, the 1/4 inch pipe needs a 7/16 hole, so we'll go ahead and drill it. Since pipe thread's tapered, I like to keep track of how far I'm running the tap with the fitting I'm going to use, because not all of it seems to be created equal. A little thread tape on there, we'll go ahead and put that in and leave it in there. Fitting is in there. Bolt is threaded through there. Of course, when I went to the hardware store, we had two varieties of bolts, too long and too short. So of course went with too long. Cut that off a little bit so it's not protruding so far out. All right, the studs are in. Cut them off to where they're the right length. Went ahead and siliconed around the back, put the back cover on. Forgot to video it. My daughter's over here putting some tires on her Yukon and she talks all the time. So I got distracted. I was just working away and it's like, I should video this. Now, put a layer of silicone on the case, torqued it down to where it's just starting to get a little squeeze. We'll let that set for an hour and then I'll go ahead and finish tightening the bolts. Then we can get the mag on there. Well, this Magneto is being nothing but annoying. As you can see, I mentioned earlier that the old capacitors weren't very good. Yeah, it already quit. I had it together, had the wires on it, was pulling it through, checking the timing on the spark, and then I started losing spark. And figured it was the condenser. It wasn't ohming out very good, so got another one. But it was like I thought. It screws in. That post there will ground out the other end to shut everything down. So if I mount that inside, I just need to run another wire to where I could ground it to this to kill the spark, kill the engine. Now, a couple of other things I've learned is that clunking noise that these make as you turn them. It is a spring-loaded hub there on the end. If you look at them, it's got a spring-loaded piece. Actually, just let me take it off and I'll show you. Okay, this hub that is driven is just floating on that shaft, hooked to it by a coil spring underneath. The coil spring is attached to the inner piece here, so these two can rotate separately. Now what happens is as you take the engine, see that little pawl that hits that post there? Well, that stops it. That stops the inner shaft from rotating. And then the outer shaft continues to rotate until some arms that hang down off this push that in. And when that gets pushed in, it releases the inner shaft that's hooked all the way through the deal and spins it really fast. And that way you can get your spark at low, like cranking speeds, whether you're hand propping or whatever, that snap. Let's see it. That snap right. Now this snap you get is that loading that up so that gear inside actually stops moving while that spring is winding up here. See how the bolt is not turning? So that means the inner shaft that goes through to the points is not turning at all. And then when you get to the point here, it snaps all that forward. Gets you the acceleration you need to make the spark. Now when you're got this on the engine and I was cranking it by the prop hub bolt, you have to crank it pretty fast to get that all to catch and to snap like that. Otherwise you're not going to get a spark. So that's one thing to watch out for when you're hand cranking. Shouldn't be an issue prop starting it because, of course, prop starting it, you're going to flip it pretty hard. And another thing about that snap, that is just for starting it. The little pawl that hit the pin that would kick it back out as the outer hub turned, it is part of a flyweight. So when this thing actually starts, those flyweights will rotate, the pawl will be pulled back, so then the hub, the driven hub, and the shaft will all turn at the same time. There won't be any more of that snapping action just as soon as it starts. So it doesn't do that clacking, snapping noise all the time when it's running, just when you're getting it started. Okay, right now, if you remember when I had it apart earlier, there was a gear drive assembly in there that ran this distributor on the back. I'm going to show you how to set it. Take this off. I've only got 2 screws holding the main assembly on, or holding the distributor on. right now. There's normally 4. We'll pull this distributor assembly out. Disconnect the condenser wire. And we got that exposed, so I'm going to roll this around. Get it on top dead center. Well, 26 degrees before. And that right there is 26 degrees before, but I need to go past it far enough to let it release. Now, that would have fired it right there when it did that. So we'll back it back up 26 degrees. So that should be the firing spot for this cylinder. So now we need to time the distributor. And that has to do with the gears between here and here. And I was trying to line up, there's a right and a left marking on this gear. Well, what that is for your right and your left rotation. And for these, you have a right rotation. And it'll have that marked, your rotation, on this little data tag over here. So what you want to do is you're using the R on the gear there. And they have a hole in the gear and they have a hole in the outside. So you take, I'm using an Allen wrench, and you put it through the outside hole and through the gear. Get it lined up. And you can slip that back together and put your bolts back in. And that will have the distributor timed. And see, I've got where the little contact is for the distributor marked right there. And that corresponds to the number 1 spark plug wire. So that would fire off that one. So that's how you set that. You don't have to look through there and try to get the teeth meshed. You just put your pin through here, get that where you want it, and bolt it back together. Here is the little data tag on there. And you can see its rotation. Like I said, it's right rotation. You also got the 15 degrees of lag. Now, I wasn't sure what that was. Little Googling, that has to do with the spring-loaded bit to fire it off when you're first cranking it. Now, that lets it lag about 15 degrees behind what it would normally fire at. That way the engine won't kick back when you're hand propping it or starting it with an electric starter. So when you're cranking it through, well, when I was cranking it through on the bench using a wrench, it looked like my spark was coming in late, which it was, but that's how it's designed to do. As soon as it levels out, those flyweights go out, it's no longer using the spring action, then your timing should go back to where it's supposed to be. And I also figured yesterday that since we have your 26 degree, it's focusing on the wrong thing, but there's a 26 degree mark on here that lines up with the case separation point, that once this is running, you could use an inductive timing light, you know, the clamp-on deal on your number 1 wire. You'd have to rig up, you'd have to have a battery or something to run the timing light, 12-volt battery. But you could put your inductive pickup on the wire, sight right through here, and you could see if it was actually firing right at 26 like you want it. And then if it's not, you can loosen this up and pivot this and set the timing spot on. So it should be really close, setting it with the meter like we did earlier in the video. But to double check it, I'd use a timing light. And that's all that I have discovered so far. But yeah, I think the old condensers are definitely a problem. My plan's on wiring right at the moment. I decided to go ahead and mount the condenser externally. There just wasn't a good way to fit that in there and bolt it down. So it's on the outside. I ran 2 new leads. One will hook to the condenser. The other one I left long enough that I could run it eventually up into the cockpit for the kill switch. I ran the screw through the condenser bracket on the inside, left enough that I could put a nut. And this little L-shaped bracket is the little lead there that I don't use anymore. That came off the back of the condenser. I just cleaned the paint off, bent it in an L. And now when I run these two wires through there, I can run them back behind that, run a zip tie around that, and there's no way they can get up into the gear. As you can see down there, the wires come out, they go down. It totally clears the gear because the gear will be in this area there by the coil. So nothing will be in harm's way. The hole down here, I plan on taking a piece of foam, cut it into a disc, and run the wires through the center of it and just pack it into the hole there. It won't go anywhere and will seal up plenty good for what this is going to be exposed to. So I'll go ahead and button this together. So next video probably be actually cutting the valve cover is up next, getting those on there. And while I'm doing that, I'll be seeing what I need as far as pipes for the intake. So until the next video, thanks for watching.